All right, so my name is Marisa Morby, and I am here today to talk to you about design and data and urban planning. As a disclaimer, this is not what I do for a job. This is something that I'm really passionate about, and so I'm interested to see kind of what all of you think about it, what interests you, what doesn't. I love making sure that we can get everybody involved in things like urban planning and design because it's so important for all of our cities. So, yeah. So a little bit about me. Oh, that's my time tracker. A little bit about me. I recently moved back from Portland, Oregon, from Austin, Texas. I was there for about a year and a half. I've traveled around a bunch. And I have a background doing research, product management, human resources, of all things, and a little bit of design. So there's a lot going on there. And right now, I currently work as a consultant with startups both here and in San Francisco. So, yeah. Oh no, I have broken the thing. There we go. So, first question is, what is urban planning? A lot of us, well, I shouldn't say that, but it may be that urban planning kind of has one connotation for some people versus others. It's more than one thing, and I think that a lot of times we can think of it as this, like it's just these big buildings and streets. That's all it is. It doesn't do anything else. It's like the downtown centers of where we live. But in actuality, it covers a lot of things. It's everywhere that we live. It's like mixed use condominiums with businesses at the bottom. It's areas like Washington Park here in town where we're able to have green spaces and get together and see music and shows. Urban planning also is about transit and transportation. So that means how we plan our highways as well as how we get from one place to another on public transportation. And then it's also about this, how we get around like on our feet. So on our sidewalks, making sure that everything is planned correctly for us to get around by foot, both downtown and outside of town. So it encompasses a lot of things. It's not just one thing, and it's not just construction. It really does require a whole lot of different aspects and disciplines to be able to do urban planning for any type of city. Lastly, we have highways, which is another thing that we have to make sure to think about when we think about urban planning. So it spreads across the entire city, both inside the downtown and then out into the suburbs as well. So it's all of these things: roads, public transports, things all the way down to like the stop signs, speed bumps, and traffic lights that you see either around your apartments and houses, downtown and outside of Portland proper. So who's involved with urban planning? I know that when I first started reading about this, which was probably a few years ago, I used to think that urban planning was just sort of something that happened. The city builds up around us, right? And so I naively thought, okay, well, someone's, I guess, maybe planning it, I don't know. And it required architects, construction workers, local government. I would see some things getting decided, but I didn't really know how it worked. So you think that these are all the people that are involved in it. But when you look underneath that, in a deeper level, you can see all these other things. There's people that are doing systems design, so thinking about how all of this works together. You've got front-end devs, back-end devs working on like the data layers that keep our city together. We have UX designers that design certain sites that we have to interact with. So if you think of like, if any of you use the parking downtown, like Parking Kitty, someone has to design that, does the dashboard for it, all of that. It also requires data science and research. So people have to go around and get that information, and someone has to take in a lot of the quantitative data that we have and analyze it as well. So really, it's not just a few people that are involved in creating cities, but a lot of people, and including us. So we get to have a say in how our cities are built and how they grow around us. And I think that, at least for me, is what makes it something I'm so passionate about. You know, I spend a lot of time creating products, but to be able to help create the city that I live into, I think is not only a challenge, but something that can be really fun when you find a way to do it that really satisfies you. So I think that around the world, we can talk about different cities that have focused on not using the right data, because everything that's built is built on some type of data set, even if it's, you know, the number of people that are going through an intersection, or if it's how many pedestrians use a road throughout the day. If it's being tracked or not being tracked, it's all data. You may not be using any, but you're making decisions based on that. So what happens when we don't focus on the right data? This is the intersection of Portage and Maine in Canada, and it's one of the most dangerous intersections, at least in Canada, possibly in the world, and it doesn't allow for any pedestrian access. You can see all the red that shows that you're not allowed to walk there, and then they have underground entrances. So this is an intersection where they basically used the fact that they wanted to increase the flow of car traffic, not foot traffic. They wanted to make sure it was easy for cars. It used to be open to pedestrian traffic. They closed it off, made it easier for cars to go through as a thoroughfare, and now it's extremely dangerous to walk through and practically impossible. So this is a really good example of how using the wrong data, such as only cars, one data set to create something, can be a real problem. This is another reason. Our old zoning laws throughout the country used to be based on kind of quadrants. So we would think we have an industrial district, a business district, a living district, and like a kind of shopping district. And this is an old zoning map from Utica, New York. And they've mapped out both the central business district and the community commercial district together, but then you can see all of the offices and apartments in that yellow line, away from all of the things. And this is, again, using the wrong data. They're using what they think is the most efficient way to plan a city, not the way that people actually work. So what data should we be looking at as we are not only living in our cities, but hopefully getting involved and starting to help plan the world around us? One of the things is designing for optimal group size. So we can each handle about 150, I want to say contacts, but that's not the word, but you know, we can remember 150 people, we can remember 150 names. And making sure that we keep group sizes in the public to around that is a really good way to make sure that we are keeping it safe, like feels physically safe to us, as well as designing for people to interact with each other. So this is a farmer's market in Nashville, and you can see that people are kind of spread out. There's quite a few people there, but they're able to really kind of meander as they want, and it's not so overcrowded that people are like pushed in together, which feels very physically unsafe. Designing for face-to-face interaction is another huge thing that we can do. And they're doing this a lot in Amsterdam, in Copenhagen. This is from BIG, that's it's an architecture firm, and I believe he's out of Copenhagen. That may be wrong, but this is an example of a mixed-use building where people are able to go out on their patios, which are the green spaces that look like stairs, and they can interact with one another, both there and at the bottom, which is mixed-use building, so those are shops. But they're able to retreat back into their own spaces. When they've done studies on how people interact, being able to go out and talk to people, but then retreat back into your own private space is actually one of the things that helps us be happier in where we live, because we have physical safety as well as the ability to open ourselves up to people outside of our own house. Designing with green spaces is another way to get people out and walking around a city, which is a great way to increase happiness overall. So this is from Austin, and this is a plan to design green space down by the waterfront, and making sure that your cities are taking account of this and keeping areas for people to walk that are parks, greenways, so that they can both walk and bike, is really important for getting the community out together, which both helps decrease violence, but also helps people feel like they can go outside, shop, and interact with one another. And then designing for mobility. So obviously I use something from Portland and biking, but not just that, making sure that transit, public transportation is accessible to everybody. That means not just in the city center, but outside the city center, and making sure that public transportation goes out through all corners of your city. Europe is fairly good at this in many major cities, in Paris and London. Granted, the trains are packed, but you can get anywhere like on the tube in London. And so making sure that we do that and that we are advocating for that is really important in creating a happy city as well. And then designing for responsiveness. And this is where that data layer comes in, and where we see a lot of the data science coming together. So there have been multiple projects where people have been able to use the predictive analytics in terms of making sure that ambulances can be in the right spot, to make sure that they get fire alarms and smoke detectors into homes that are at higher risk of not having them. Bike share programs like we have in Portland to make sure that bikes are stocked in the right ways, and even Uber and Lyft actually use predictive analytics to be in an area where they think you're going to be based on different times of day. So using our knowledge, our ability to integrate that tech with design and integrate that data with design helps create cities that respond to us rather than build up around us. So these are a few things that are currently broken or don't exist really, that I think that tech can really fix to help create better cities. We definitely need more data collection so that we can understand systems as a whole. I know that there's a lot of opinions around what is too much data, but being able to just know something as simple as how many people are going down a sidewalk at different times of day to make sure that people are able to cross the road more safely, having a traffic camera is very good for that. And I think is important to be able to aggregate all that information. Keeping APIs open so that we can plug in data into real world applications is also really important. You know, making sure that everybody can get access to that and create something that helps the whole. And then creating databases so that the information is accessible. And a good example of this is actually in Portland. I wanted to use an example here, but we have park tree inventory, and what they've done with that, they've kind of taken all of those things that I've talked about, both the data, it's not open source, but it is an open database, and then used all of that to go through the parks and track each tree, and from that, they tell us how much carbon storage, air pollution removal, stormwater interception, and ultimately how much money trees save us. So this is Wilshire Park. Wilshire Park saves us about $8,000 a year because of the trees that are in Wilshire Park. And having access to things like that helps us protect not only the things that keep us happier and what keep our cities easy and happy to live in, but it allows us to be able to have a say in the way that cities are built around us. So a couple ways to get involved. These are 3 sites that I wanted to put up, and we can share this information, but Smart Growth America, First Stop Portland, and C40 Cities are 3 organizations that are working to kind of integrate not only open source, but also get the community involved, working on growing our cities in a very smart and effective way so that more people have access to the entire city, so helping with mobility, green spaces, and things like that. And then once you find an area that interests you, there are a lot of people on there that you can reach out to. If you're not on Twitter, they've got emails listed on there as well. And then asking how you can lend your skills. I have a background doing kind of like team organization systems design, so I love being able to find where the problems are. It's like a puzzle, and put it together. And that can help in terms of getting teams together on projects so that they're running efficiently. So if you have things that you love to do as a hobby, if any of you do dev as a hobby or design as a hobby, any of those, they can all be applied to help make our cities better. And these are the resources as well. So, yeah. Thank you.